All right. Take number two. Sorry about that. Don't know why my internet just decided to literally shut off, but that's all good. Welcome back. Welcome back. Again, put up where you guys are from. We'll do this all over again. We'll restart it. This is episode number 157 of Calibrated Live with Scott. I am, of course, your host, Scott. Today we are discussing the new war in the Middle East. Israel attacked Iran. Iran has responded. Ongoing exchanges of missile fire continue. So we have that to talk about. We also have quite a few updates around Ukraine. So we're going to talk about that as well. Lots of movement, a potential massive breakthrough in the Southern Donetsk region. So we're going to cover all of that in due time. I think we are going to start with Israel, however, today. But yes, take two. Here we go. Hi from the Kingdom of Bahrain, Serbia, Pakistan. Nice guys. I know I missed some of you, Chile. I'm sorry that I missed you guys. Bangladesh, Toronto, Canada. We are back. Let's see if we can keep it together this time. Apologies for all of that. I'm going to go ahead and retweet my live stream real quick, and then we will go ahead and get started. All right. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, guys. All right. Here we go. Denmark, Croatia. Greetings to you all. Turkmenistan. Nice. Wait a minute, Scott looks different. What happened to him? I was replaced. They came in and they switched me out with the doubles. So, all right, guys. All right. Let's just go ahead and talk about the big news. The Israeli government decided to go through with strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. I've been talking about this for months. I've been explaining why this is going to happen and why it is very clear as to why it is going to happen. So not just that it happened, but the reasoning behind it. And if you guys have been paying attention at all, you would know that my whole position is that the U.S. is following policy papers. There's sort of a continuity of agenda between president and president. And we've seen that play out almost exactly. Your peacetime, if you're an American, your peacetime president, your non-interventionalist president has yet to stop the war in Ukraine. It's actually escalated. He has he never solved the Houthi issue in the Red Sea. And currently he is aiding and assisting Israel in strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, which is a ridiculous escalation. It sets a horrible precedent in the world. Especially in areas where we could see battles coming up very soon. And basically, the whole upshoot of this is that the U.S. needs Iran knocked off the board. Israel wants Iran knocked off the board because then they have a much easier time in the Middle East projecting their power. Bibi wants the war with Benjamin Netanyahu, the president of Israel, wants the war because he's looking at a very, very rough election, potentially jail time if he's criminally indicted on some of the things that they are talking about. So he is using the war in Gaza. He is using the war now with Iran to evade that up-and-coming situation that he's going to have to deal with eventually. He doesn't want to deal with that. He wants to just keep pushing the wars and keep the wars going. In these strikes, we have seen, so I think it was Thursday, in the middle of the night in Iran time, Israel time, we saw strikes by Israeli fighter aircraft with cruise missiles and drones inside of Iran. It does look like something happened to the Iranian air defense that first night, where it was either hacked or something happened and they were having an extremely difficult time getting air defense online. So they were sort of sitting ducks. We saw the Israelis assassinate a number of Iranian military leadership. We saw strikes on multiple nuclear facilities, strikes on radar facilities, strikes on missile bases, and so on and so forth. And this is what I told everybody was coming. We knew that this was going to happen. It was very clear. It's been clear since probably like 1992 when Benjamin Netanyahu started talking about this, talking about Iran. Iran has been 2 years or so from a nuke since 1992, according to Benjamin Netanyahu. This is how long he's been talking about this. It's how long he's been pushing for these wars against Saddam, against Iran, and in Syria, and so on. So there's this intense want from the Israeli state, but also you got to remember that the Israeli state is just a appendage of the United States. They have their own interests, I would say, but we pay for everything in their country. We pay for their military. We pay for all of the air defense interceptors that are helping to protect Tel Aviv from Iranian missiles. We pay for all of it. All of the missiles striking Iran come from the United States. All of the, it might be built in Israel, but we built the factories in Israel. We fund everything in Israel. So the U.S. is also fully complicit in this attack. This is no secret. Donald Trump came out and openly said that the U.S. was well aware that they used the negotiations on Sunday to lure the Iranian leadership into a false sense of security, slimy evil. And when the Israelis struck, the Iranians were expecting negotiations to continue. This obviously completely derails negotiations. But I think that the U.S. was trying, and the U.S. and Israel were trying to do this sort of shock and awe against the Iranian regime, try to either scare them to the negotiating table, basically say, okay, we won't enrich uranium, just stop striking us, whatever, or cause some sort of regime change. Again, this is a fallacy. This is a horrible path forward for the United States. This is a geostrategic blunder on our part for multiple reasons. Primarily, the major reason why the U.S. is going to lose here is because we are wildly underestimating the Iranian state, the Iranian regime, just like we did with Putin and Russia. We are going in with this preconceived set of notions of what Iran is capable of, what they're willing to do. And we thought, and you can see it in Benjamin Netanyahu's words, he's asking for Iranians to rise up and overthrow their government. Doesn't really work after you bomb people. That's not a way to get a regime to change. And we learned this in Russia, right? The second the U.S. allowed Ukraine to start striking inside of Russia, the entire opinion of the war changed. And it wasn't so much the Russian regime is the enemy, it's the entire Russian nation is the enemy. The people are the enemy. And you cannot make enemies of the people you're hoping are going to overthrow the regime in your favor. That's just not a solid path forward. The only way a regime change, I believe, is going to happen inside of Iran is if the U.S. gets directly involved themselves. The U.S. Air Force standoff weapons begin to be used, and Iran will just not be able to deal with that. They're already struggling with the Israeli strikes, and further U.S. and NATO commitment in the region. Britain is already sending warplanes and stuff to the Middle East. All of that is going to just overwhelm Iran. So Iran is playing a very, very delicate game right now where they're trying to respond forcefully, deter Israel from further strikes, get Israel to sort of back off and maybe come back to the negotiating table. Not that a deal is going to be done, but just sort of buying time. And in my opinion, the only thing that can save the regime right now is building a nuke. I've been saying this for months and months and months and months and months. The reason why North Korea is an existing country in the form that it is because they have nukes. We would have attacked them 30 years ago, or I don't know when they actually got a nuke, the exact date, but we would have gone after them eventually. That would have been another domino that we could have knocked off and applied more pressure and caused a refugee crisis into Russia. All sorts of stuff can come from the South and North Koreans. But we can't because the North Koreans have a nuclear deterrent. This is what the Israelis cannot allow the Iranians to achieve. If the Iranians achieve a nuclear deterrent, Israel's so small. They're small. They have a powerful, concentrated military in their air force, and they are able to project power via that air force. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, the attacks on Iran stop. That's the calculus, right? You can no longer project power because they have a nuclear deterrent. Are you willing to risk Tel Aviv for Tehran? Are you willing to do that? Because that's going to become the calculus. So if, in my opinion, if I were the Iranian regime, clearly seeing what is happening, I would build a nuke. That's the only thing I'd be focused on right now. They are already attacking you. They already don't want you to do it. What is there to lose? The only thing you can gain from developing a nuclear weapon is deterrence. And that's my whole position on what's happening right now between Iran and Israel. Just to talk about the actual strikes, Israel conducted some very strategic strikes, took out some apartments where these leaders were staying. They killed a bunch of kids doing so, but that's just Israel doing Israel things. By the way, I think one person has died in Israel from the Iranian missiles, or 4 people or something like that. These huge ballistic missiles coming in with incredible force, not killing as many civilians as the Israelis are killing in their precision strikes. So the Israelis also utilized drone teams inside of Iran using the same sort of vehicles that we saw the Ukrainians use in Operation Spiderweb. Another huge hint that U.S. intelligence is directly and closely involved with these operations, and they obviously are, because they admitted to watching the whole thing unfold in the Situation Room. They were watching all the strikes happen, so on and so forth. The U.S. is fully complicit in this. This is a escalation in the nuclear realm. So now you have the U.S. directly targeting, or U.S. Israel directly targeting nuclear facilities in a country that does not have a nuclear weapons program that's provable. We haven't seen any evidence of an Iranian nuclear weapons program outside of their ability to enrich uranium, which is what you use in nuclear power plants and stuff like that. So again, it's another Iraqi WMD situation where you have to understand that they are lying to you because they want this war to happen. And you can see how giddy people like John Bolton and Lindsey Graham are. They've been waiting for this day their entire lives, and it is the grossest, cringiest shit you've ever seen from grown men ever. All right. I got one question. 114th fans represent. The offensive continues. That's talking about Russia and Ukraine. Thank you for your comment. Scott's pimple is bigger than it is. Yeah, I have a pimple. I got one pimple. Sucks. What are you going to do? It's going away. But yeah, if you guys have any questions on the Israel Iran stuff, we can talk about it a little bit more. The Iranian strikes inside of Tel Aviv did some damage. Between 30 and 40 impacts were recorded at different military bases and headquarter locations around Israel, northern, southern, and in central Israel. There are some good videos of the strikes inside of Tel Aviv. A lot of the AP reporters, Fox and CNN, were on the roofs watching during the strikes. So, you know, the Iranians were able to penetrate all of the THAAD, all of the David Sling, all of the, you know, Iron Dome doesn't intercept ballistic missiles, but they attempted to. We could see them firing off. All of that, penetrated all of that and still achieved hits. And the numbers in the 5 waves of missiles that the Iranians launched is believed to be somewhere between 200 and 400. So not a really expensive series of strikes, although the Iranians are losing some of their missile capabilities via Israeli strikes inside the country. My nose looks bigger. Sorry. It's not. It's the same size. Do you think Mossad is capable of smuggling a nuke to Tehran? I think the Israelis can air launch a nuke to Tehran. I don't think they need to smuggle one in. All right. There's going to be a new wave tonight. Iran announced it. Yeah, no, this is a war, guys. This is a open war. This is not just retaliation, tit for tat. This is a war. They are fighting a war. And if you, in just my personal opinion, I'm not 100% sure on this. It's just how I feel like things are going. I think the Israelis wanted to do some significant damage and really scare the Iranians in the first couple hours. The Israelis don't necessarily have the ability to sustain this level, this strike capability. And a lot of the Iranian assets are, 200 to 500 meters underground or in mountain complexes, which would require either nukes basically to collapse, the opening structures for these buildings and stuff like that, or heavy bombing with U.S. aid. So Israel is not really going to be able to damage Iran's nuclear enrichment capabilities. According to reports, Iran has moved a good number of their good amount of their very important equipment into these deep underground facilities. So Israel can only really strike what's available on the surface or just barely underground with bunker busters, but they can't really get into the super deep hardened facilities. So Iranian missile capabilities are intact, and Iranian nuclear enrichment and development capabilities are intact. Some Iranian nuclear scientists were killed, but I imagine that they still have the wherewithal and knowledge to build a nuke. It's not overly complicated to make an implosion device. Please, will you try to tell us that Iran is not losing? It's not so much a win-lose here. Iran is taking losses, if that's what you mean. I mean, they're getting hit, they're suffering, but they're not necessarily losing in the scope of what Israel is trying to accomplish, at least right now. Things could change. We saw in Syria, it took a week and then Syria fell. But the Iranian regime is much more stable and strong than the Syrian regime was. There's no civil war. There's no U.S. occupation in the country. There's not a real big like ISIS group or anything. There's not a ton of destabilization within the country. It's very hard to invade the country. So they were hoping for a shock and awe. Now the Iranians are hiding, right? Now the element of surprise is gone. These strikes are becoming less and less effective on Iran, and they will continue. And the Iranians will continue to lose important facilities and, potentially leadership and so on and so forth. But the key here is Israel accomplishing its goals? And I don't think so. I think that them getting hit in Tel Aviv was very worrying to them. The Kira or whatever it's called, it's the Israeli Pentagon was hit, which is like it's like the center of of your defense and military capabilities. So you don't want that place getting targeted, and it got hit very, very hard by what looks like hypersonic missiles. So the war is continuing. I'm not going to say that either side is winning or losing right now, because it doesn't. I mean, if you're just going off of losses, then yeah, I guess Israel is beating Iran. But Iran also doesn't have F-35s that have stealth capability that can get into range to target things inside of Israel. They have to launch these ballistic missile waves. The key would be do enough damage to Israel that they back off and you have regained deterrence against these strikes, and then develop a nuke. That's the win for Iran, right? That's the win. It's not destroying Israel. Israel's not going to get destroyed by ballistic missiles. That's not going to happen. They might hit very sensitive targets, but they just don't I mean, it's impossible to do that much damage with the ballistic missiles that are available in the world, let alone within Iran. So yeah, it's a lot of moving parts, but I wouldn't say that Iran is necessarily losing. They just got hit really hard in the first couple of hours. Now, what could happen very shortly is if Israel begins targeting Iranian oil infrastructure at a serious pace or a serious intensity, then you could see things like the Strait of Hormuz close. You could see oil infrastructure in the Middle East getting targeted, Saudi Arabia, all of the different areas, and that would really hurt the market. It would help the Russians. So there's a lot of moving parts here. And there's a lot of options for the Iranians right now. Yeah, the shock and awe has passed. The Iranians have stabilized somewhat. They're still taking losses. They're still getting hit, but they're not out of the fight. They're going to continue to fight. The key will be if the domestic situation in Iran can stay strong enough throughout the course of these events. But from what I've seen, I've even seen like I saw women. I posted this. There were women in Tehran that don't have the hijab on, which is illegal. So they're very liberal. They're activists almost. They're the people that would be against the Iranian regime, calling for Iran basically to nuke Israel. So that's sort of the situation. You don't really get people on your side by bombing them. It just doesn't work like that. All right. Thank you all for your questions. Let's see. When does China step in? 27 looks too far away. China is China. China thinks that they can win by doing nothing for 50 years and just improving their economic situation. And they're probably right. But eventually, the U.S. is going to come their way. The whole point of going after Iran is to disrupt the Belt and Road Initiative, is to disrupt oil energy transfer to China, weaken China, and then take on China once China is weakened. The problem with this is they failed with Russia to destabilize Russia or pull Russia away from China. And now you're looking at a much stronger Russo-Chinese alliance relationship that really puts a wrench in the U.S.'s plans of countering China. So they have a lot more energy security. They have a large market that they're able to trade very aggressively with. And yeah, so I don't know when China is going to step in any to any serious degree. I don't know if that's in their best interests to step in, but I think that eventually the U.S. will come for them. So like I said, don't negotiate, just prepare, because the U.S. is not worth negotiating with. All right, guys. All right. Who's going to run out of missiles first? I would say probably Israel, just based off of what their army and military is designed for. Now they're going to have a lot of bombs and stuff, but in terms of standoff strike weapons, not as many as the Iranians do, at least from the beginning of the war. Now we don't know, because there's been strikes inside of Tehran. We don't know what damage has been done. Oh, what's up, Tyler? Been forever, buddy. Always appreciate your coverage. I appreciate you being in here. It's been a minute since I've seen you. It's good to see you in here. Iran, Israel reminds me of how good Russia is at war. And this is something that I was going to talk about. There seems to be this illusion around air defense where, Iranian air defense is so bad because whatever, it's not taking down F-35s at standoff range, even though the F-35s, if they had interceptors launched at them, would just go cold and blast away and wouldn't be able to get hit. Iran is having struggles with their air defense, but also their air defense is not it's not Russian air defense. It's not U.S. air defense. It's not Chinese air defense. It is some of it's Russian, but it's not the Russian military's air defense. It's not as built up. It's not as complex and integrated, I would say. So you have the Israelis taking advantage of that with their very advanced stealth capabilities. And that's just sort of the way it goes. And the same goes for Israeli air defense. If you saturate an area with enough missiles and you clutter radars and you overload air defense systems, you get through any air defense system. There is no impenetrable air defense system. People think 100% is what you should expect from air defense. You should expect 25 to 50% interceptions. Like it's a numbers game. You're trying to reduce the amount of damage that is done to you. Now, in highly protected areas like the Kremlin or something like that, you would probably expect a much higher percentage, just because they are interwoven air defense networks that should be able to defend the capital from at least a minor missile attack. You can still always overload those systems with hundreds of missiles. But Yeah, no. So Thad and David Sling can be beat, right? You can only fire so many interceptors before you have to reload. The interceptors, you usually fire 2 per missile or target you're engaging, because that's the most successful method is fire 2. You have like a 50% chance to hit. So hopefully one of those 2 takes out that target. You have 8 targets coming in. You just don't have enough missiles, right? You have 10 targets coming in. You have a less missiles, and you have to pick which target you're going to take out. So there's this false idea around air defense, I think, where people laugh about it consistently. But we've seen U.S. air defense fail. We've seen Russian air defense fail. We've seen Iranian air defense fail. It's just the perception around air defense, I think, is overly built up. All right, guys, I'm going to get into my map now. We're going to talk about Ukraine. That was a long talk about that, so we'll get into this. Guys, remember, if you are new here, you can always go like, comment, and subscribe. That is the easiest way to help me get my work spread to more people, get me in the algorithm, get me seen. I really appreciate everybody who goes and likes and comments. I go through and I like them regularly, so it's very helpful, and it's just the easiest way that you guys can support me. Let's see. Didn't Trump deliver Moabs this year to Israel? Yeah, but Moabs are still not overly capable of penetrating mountain complexes. These are facilities that are basically designed to withstand nuclear weapons. So there's not a conventional weapon that's going to be able to penetrate. You might be able to close down shafts and entrances for a while, but that would have to be a consistent thing. I was in Erbil in 2020 when an al-Assad got hit, still underestimating Iran's LR strike capabilities. Yes, we that's just a common trope, though. We have a superiority complex, both the Israelis and the Americans, where we think our everything is better than their everything. So yeah, we regularly underestimate, and I think Israel is paying a heavy price for it right now. But yeah, let's go over to the map and talk about some of the updates. So moving over here to the Southern Donetsk Zaporozhye region. This is actually the Zaporozhye region, and this is the Holyai-Polye front. Remember, guys, I told you that there was going to be an offensive. I have a source in this region who is in a logistics role. And he was talking about how he was previously in Kursk. He was then moved to Rostov and then down into the Zaporozhye region. I have not heard from him since, which happens sometimes when OPSEC begins. And we see that the Russians are now advancing in this Zaporozhye region, which I had predicted. The villages of Orehiv and Holyai-Polye, the crossroad villages, would be pressured over this summer campaign. We're beginning to see that over here. A small frontline advance just south of Vysoke, and then here in Malinivka, Russian forces have entered the village. Remember, previously, Russian forces had advanced through these fields towards the village. It is likely now that most of this village is under Russian control. Get rid of that, sorry. All right. Moving up to the, oh, it didn't save. I'm so mad. I hate my map sometimes. Why did this not save? This entire update just did not save. Okay, well, while I do this update for you guys and you get to watch it live, it'll be very interesting. So Russian forces have advanced throughout a majority of this pocket here. I just updated this, but sometimes the new updates just do not save. They just like auto delete, and it's very annoying. So stick with me here. Russian forces have entered the village of Komar here and have captured the entirety of said village. Boom. I'm just going to do this real quick so you guys don't have to watch me put each individual little piece on the river here. But Russian forces have advanced, entered the village of Komar, and have had very, very great success basically in this entire pocket here. I'm going to continue updating this map for you guys. I am very sorry that I'm doing this live. It really sucks. I did it before. I had it set up, and then it decided not to save it. So But yeah, a pretty serious advance here for the Russians. Again, they are just directly on the outside of the village of Zaporizhia, which is very, very close to the edge of the Vovocha River cutoff, I would say. Again, I'll show you this little prediction that I have down here. Boom, right here, the purple right here. This is the Vovocha area. So this is the river that separates, and this is the peninsula I said the Russians would advance through and capture. We are currently seeing that play out before our very eyes. So again, moving up here, Russian forces have advanced all the way along the Vovocha River here, have pushed up into the flank of the Shane. Sorry. I know this is annoying. It's very annoying for me. Okay, so Russian forces have advanced along the Vovocha River here, have pushed up to the village of Zaporizhia. There are only 2 fortified areas remaining in this pocket, and I do expect the Ukrainians to withdraw from here shortly, just because there's a very difficult logistic situation and no urban area or fortifications in this region to actually hold and maintain. All right. This is not the end of the update. Russian forces have also captured the entirety of the village of Oleksivka on the northern end of the Vovocha River. They have also captured the village of Zeleny Kut and Novoyukonika, which puts them directly on the Dnipropetrovsk border. This is not the end of the update. This is why I'm so pissed. This is a very big update, and it didn't save 3/4 of it. So I'm sorry. Again, I am going to be doing a little bit of live mapping, which is not the most interesting. I know you guys get the behind the scenes look at what I do to make this map happen every day. It takes fucking forever, and when it doesn't save, it is such a pain in my ass. Okay, so Russian forces have leveled the front along the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, have advanced out to this small ravine, and have pushed into this area over here. So advanced through these fields, have captured the village of Khorekove, and have leveled the front out along the Dnipropetrovsk-Donetsk border. We can expect that the Russians will push up into this area very soon. It is also reported that Russians have taken a couple fields in the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, but we are waiting for geolocations before we call that official. Got to make sure your upload's saved, bro. It's not like that. So you like build a polygon like this, like you just build a polygon, and then if it's like something happens where the page like stops refreshing and saving, and then when you refresh, that polygon will just be gone. It won't be there. And so when I use my map and I make yellow adjustments, so if there's already green and I'm showing an additional Russian advance, I'll do it in yellow. I then have to cover it in green. I delete the yellow underneath it. And when I do that and then I refresh, sometimes the green that has been put over the yellow disappears and goes back. And that's what you guys saw. So I'll have to come back in and redo this map in just a second. But thank you for your patience. Appreciate it. Let's see. Regarding the conflict with Israel and Iran, is it attritional? What type of doctrine would describe it? Also, will China intervene due to oil-related necessities? Pakistan seems like China's puppet. Pakistan is very close with China. I wouldn't necessarily call it a puppet. They just have a economic and military alliance where the Pakistanis will buy Chinese goods, and the Chinese use that location for their Belt and Road Initiative. They pump a lot of money in for infrastructure, and constantly in Afghanistan and Pakistan, there are Chinese engineers and stuff that are regularly killed on the Belt and Road working on that by Islamic terror groups that are backed by Israel and the United States. So this is a large proxy war against multiple different groups in the Middle East. But yes, Pakistan actually warned Iran of the strike ahead of time. And yeah, so Pakistan is definitely on board. I don't think you're going to see China step in, just because I don't think Iran is necessarily going to collapse. I don't think you would necessarily see China step in either way. But who knows? I am not a Chinese expert or a China expert, so they have been very passive and very neutral for decades, and I don't see that changing for Iran in the Middle East. Nothing wrong with a little bit of live mapping. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, brother. And then regarding, is it attritional? It is attritional, I would say, for the Israelis more than it is for the Iranians. I would say a shock and awe is more of how I would relate it. The Israelis were trying to accomplish something in the first couple of days, really put the Iranians on the back foot, potentially destroy a large portion of their nuclear capabilities, and then force them to come back to the table and discuss. And then eventually regime change would end up following, because the Iranian state just gets weaker and weaker with pressure and pressure. That's sort of the idea. If the Iranian state can survive, much like the Russian state has through sanctions and all of that, if they can survive, then the West loses. The West is not built for these long, prolonged wars. They're already having massive air defense interceptor shortages, and this is just exacerbating that to the nth degree. Ukraine is going to be put on the back burner for now. So no, shock and awe, almost like not a terror campaign in that they're committing just blatant terrorism or anything. They are striking majority military targets, but it's a terror campaign, and like they want to scare the Iranians into submission. And that's just, I don't think that's going to work. So for your additional labor, thank you, Tyler. Bro, you don't have to do that. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you being in here. I love seeing you. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for your coverage. It's a little biased sometimes, but always good. Yeah, I mean, I think that having a bias is somewhat important. If you're just completely unbiased, you're just saying facts to people, which is fine, and that's news, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But a bias is how you determine if somebody is correct or incorrect in their position, right? Like if I didn't have a bias and I was just on here showing you a map and saying this, that, or the other, you can make your own decisions. But my position on this channel, and in my personal opinion, is to deliver a subjective look at the war in Ukraine backed up with objective evidence, right? So when I say things like Israel is going to attack Iran, this is a U.S. plan. It has been in policy papers for decades. They want to do this. Netanyahu's been talking about it since 1992. This is something that's coming up, and this is the time. Israel is under extreme pressure and extremely desperate. The U.S. is desperate to counter China, and they're pivoting and doing all of this stuff. All of this screams desperation. You don't have to attack people if you're not desperate, right? That's the common trope. If you're in a position of extreme power, you can just negotiate and dominate people in negotiations. And the U.S. can't negotiate anywhere. They're not dominating any negotiations. They're just going with this kinetic route. And it's not, I don't think it's particularly good. I think it's a strategic stumble. I think that Trump openly lied. And I think that having my bias interjected into this is not the worst thing when my bias, in my personal opinion, tends to be correct. And the reason why it's correct is because it's backed up with objective facts. So yeah, I get what you're saying. Sorry if it's overly biased. I try not to make it overly biased. I just don't, I think that bias is what makes my page, right? If you just want facts and open source, you can go do that yourself. Why wouldn't Iran get nukes by now? Pakistan has them. This shows to the world that North Korea was 100% right. I fear mass proliferation of nukes. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The reason why this is such a geostrategic blunder, it's a catastrophe, is because now every nation that has any sort of nuclear program is going to look at this and go, oh, Iran was trying to do everything possible to just keep their enriched uranium for their civilian energy uses and not build a nuke. They haven't built a nuke since 1992. right? They've been 2 years away from a nuke for my entire life, my entire existence. Iran has been this close to a nuke. I'm 27, so I've been sitting here watching this my entire life. I've heard this so many times. In 2011, Iran was 3 years away from a nuke. In 1998, I believe, Iran was 4 years away from a nuke, which put them at a nuke at 2002 when we decided to invade Iraq, or weapons of mass destruction, whatever. So yeah, no, this is a very, very typical thing, and I believe that Iran should build nukes. I've been saying this for 6 months. I've been saying, Iran, just build a nuke. If you build a nuke and you do it secretly and you demonstrate it and you detonate it and you show the world we have a nuke, Israel will not strike your nuclear facilities. And if they do, you respond, right? That's the whole point of building a nuke, is saying we will use this on you if you attack us. It's a deterrent. And yeah, we are going to see nuclear proliferation across the globe now because of this event. It's going to happen. You are going to see more and more countries developing nuclear weapons. I'll also add one more question. What if Iranian regime changes Israel? What if an Iran regime changes Israel? The Likud coalition within Israel isn't all popular. Regime change is a double sword. Yeah, no, this is part of it, right? If they achieve their maximalist goals, which is regime change, and the Ayatollahs are kicked out, what happens to Iran? You create a pit. You create another pit, just like Iraq, just like Syria, and you just have chaos. And then you have to go and send our boys to go in and die for stability in these regions, or whatever excuse we come up with. And yeah, no, this is just, again, I have no interest in fighting wars for Israel. I have no interest in regime change. I think it's consistently been a negative across the board. Gaddafi, Libya is a fucking disaster. Iraq, fucking disaster. Syria, fucking disaster. It's only going to get worse too. The more regime changes, the less stability you have. And that's what Israel wants. Israel wants the chaos. They can use that chaos to expand into greater Israel and expand their geostrategic influence. Thank you for your questions, guys. You've been popping off today. This has been crazy. Killing it. Let's get back to these updates. Russian forces have advanced and captured a majority of the village of Novomikhailivka, which is, again, right on the Dnipropetrovsk border. We will see if the Russians actually cross in earnest. We'll see. They seem to be holding kind of right on the border, but we'll see in time. They should push for Novopavlivka. This is very close, and it's another road here that they would gain access to, which would lead them up to Mazova, and give them control of the road, basically from Donetsk all the way out to Oleksivka in this area. They have just this straight logistics line from Donetsk up this highway through Marinka, through Kharkove, through Dashane. Yeah, so. All right, moving up. Russian forces have captured the village of Mirne right here, which is just outside of Nimrod. Again, this goes along with the predictions that I talked about. You can see it right here. Russian forces will continue moving up into the villages of Razine, onto these Terikons, industrial waste heaps. Once they have accomplished that, they will look down on the road into Pokrovsk, which will tighten supply around this entire region. Again, we're not seeing a ton of movement out over here, and I wouldn't expect it just because this is an area where the Ukrainians can defend quite easily. It is the max extent of the Russian logistics. Pokrovsk needs to fall. Pokrovsk is the next city that I think needs to fall if the Russians want to achieve serious success. If Pokrovsk falls, they get access to all of these roads, and they get a new logistics point to start pushing out. Yeah, I think Pokrovsk and Minharad are very, very time sensitive for the Russians. They need to figure this out, just so they can keep up with the rest of the front moving in the direction that it is. All right, moving over here to the garbage front. This is Donetsk. Guys, this is almost complete. The Russians have pushed out tremendously, probably like 100 square kilometers right here have been advanced through by the Russians. They are now pushing towards Katarinivka. Remember, this entire salient right here is getting very tight. The Russians are currently right here. The road, this is the only road into the entire area. It is under Russian fire and drone control. So we can expect the Russians to push out through Sherbanivka and Novopatsky, or Novospatsky, very, very quick compared to what has been happening, which is titanically slow movement in this section of the front. The Ukrainians have a very strong ability to defend in this area. And so they're being surrounded. Again, another one of my predictions, and this is a part of my bias right here. This was a prediction that I made, right? You can see, oh, no, this one. You can see that the Russians have almost completed this prediction where I said this entire line was going to advance north from Zeleny Pole all the way around over here to Stepochke. This is about to happen. You're about to see this just get complete. The Battle of Donetsk is coming to an end. The Ukrainians have almost no positions in the city any longer. Okay. Moving up to Chasiv Yar. Russian forces have advanced through the final remaining little bit of Chasiv Yar. I believe that this is all that remains of the city. So the city is 95% under Russian control. Once the Russians control the dominant high ground here, the push for Konstantinivka will begin. Again, this is an area that the Ukrainians cannot afford to lose. And the fact that they're losing it is a worrying sign, to say the least. All right. Moving up to the Seversk front, we have a small Russian advance in the village of Hihorivka, have captured the entirety of the village, and Russian forces continue to advance in the Seversk direction. The last advance on the main front line is up here in between Krasne Pershe and Novomilsk. Russian forces have just closed this area and crossed the Oskal, pushing the Ukrainians out of the little pocket that they controlled here on this high ground. The Oskal bridgehead now connects from the Russian border all the way to the city of Kupiansk. All right, and finally, Russian forces have made a small advance here in the Sumy region, capturing more of the village of Yanikivka and moving towards the village of Skade, which, by the way, again, just for you guys, this was my prediction before the Sumy region incursion even began, or I guess this, you can see where I built it from was when the Sumy region was like this. The Russians have almost completed that as well. Again, another one of my predictions coming to almost perfect, to a perfect conclusion. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that my bias has served me well. I think that I'm going to continue being slightly biased when it comes to these things because I keep proving myself right. So if things are working, they ain't broke, don't fix them. All right. All right, guys, that is it for the map. If you have some questions, go ahead and get some questions in, but I am pretty much done talking. Oh, I have not talked about the prisoner exchanges. The Russians and Ukrainians have been doing a number of POW and casualty exchanges. There's no word on the number. It looks like somewhere between 50 and 100 POWs are being exchanged at any given time. These are seriously wounded and young men, so ages 18 to 25 or 19 to 25 or whatever, are the guys that are being exchanged in these exchanges. But more importantly and more pressing for the Kiev regime is the body exchanges. The Russians have returned 3,612 Ukrainian dead, and the Russians have received 27 in return. The last two exchanges consisted of 1,200 and 1,200 Ukrainian bodies. No Russians were returned. Those were unilateral exchanges. The Russians are just giving all of their bodies back to Ukraine, which very much disrupts Ukrainian casualty figures. The fact that the Russians just have 6,000 bodies to give back puts a huge asterisk on the number that the Ukrainian government is putting out. These men are listed as MIA. So, you know, they're coming back. Their families are going to need to be paid benefits, which the Ukrainian government does not have the money. And yeah, these things are starting to stack up, and it's going to become real issues for the Ukrainian regime. Zelensky is trying to bring attention back to Ukraine during this whole Israeli Iran business, but Ukraine is going by the wayside. Israel's our ally. Ukraine is our proxy. That's the difference. All right. What will France do if there is an oil shock? Do you value the markets are a credible source? Does France have independence to intervene against Israel? They can try. It's not going to happen. I'm pretty sure the same honeypot operations that turn every U.S. politician pro-Israeli are also being done on the French president, and so on. He has a very questionable relationship already, so I bet there's a bunch of blackmail there. I don't think Israel's going to do anything, because that would be directly going against what the U.S. wants, and they're all in this plan together. While they might disagree with what Israel is doing, they might not be on board with it. It is still the geostrategic plan, and they're not going to. They might say publicly that they don't agree with it, but they're not going to do anything that is actually going to prevent it. So no. And yeah, this is a huge concern. The oil shock, right? If oil infrastructure in the Middle East is hit, if the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea are closed again in the manner that they were last time, you could see a definite oil shock, and this very much benefits Russia, right? Russia is benefiting from these increased oil prices from this event. So again, they're putting themselves. The West is putting themselves in an even worse position by strengthening Russia. If they can't force regime change, they have just crossed a huge red line for the world. This goes against international law, which I know doesn't matter to the West. But it does go directly against international law, their own international law. So this is a big fuck up, and I cannot believe they actually went through with it. I was very surprised and very disappointed. This is just classic death of an empire shit, and you're seeing it again and again and again, and you're just going to keep seeing it, and the U.S. is going to get more and more desperate. And again, my advice for all of these countries is prepare. Just prepare. Start making yourself economically independent, energy independent, and get ready. Because if you have a nuclear program or you do something that gets you on the bad side of the West, they are desperate. They are regime changing. They are assassinating. They are doing everything that they need to do. Which countries can intervene against Israel? That's the better question. Turkey might. Nope, Turkey's not going to. Again, NATO member. It's a geostrategic interest, right? They're not going to intervene. No countries are going to intervene. Guys, don't expect anything until there's some stability. Then you might see China help or Russia help somewhat. But right now, Iran is alone. They have the Houthis. Hezbollah isn't doing anything because they've been completely erased. So yeah. Can't sit on your hands with the Israelis. They smell weakness, and if they smell weakness, they exploit that weakness without hesitation. And you have to fight like your enemy if you want to beat your enemy, and you have to think like your enemy if you want to beat your enemy. And the Israelis are ruthless, and the Americans are crazy and egotistical, and we're gonna just do whatever we want. So get ready, boys. It's gonna be an interesting decade for sure. All right. Do the Iranians have sleeper cells in the U.S.? Will they be trying to create regime change? No. I mean, they might have some sleepers, but that regime change in the U.S. is not going to happen. That's ridiculous. We have trillions and trillions of dollars of backing of the current regime. It's just not possible, in my opinion. You heard about the lawmakers in Minnesota that got shot and killed? Yeah, both in their homes, right? Targeted assassination. The guy was apparently impersonating some sort of SWAT or special forces member. He had tactical gear on, or a police officer, and just shot these two people in their homes, two Democrats. I don't know what conspiracy theories are, or I don't know what they were backing or any of that. So I just did see that they got shot outside of Minneapolis. Yeah. I think Iran has militias in Iraq. Yeah, they have little groups here and there. They have stuff all over the place. Hezbollah isn't completely gone. They're just not acting aggressively. I think they've been greatly diminished. So yeah, they're not alone. But in terms of actually gaining support, they're alone, and they need to survive this by themselves. It's what we talked about. One by one, they got picked off. Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, right? The Israelis are just knocking over the dominoes. So no countries will intervene if Israel causes an oil shock. That's what I'm assuming would be the precedent. Okay, now you're talking about something completely different. You're talking about a massive escalation where the entire region erupts, the Strait of Hormuz closes, all of that. Then yeah, you might see some intervention, some foreign intervention. The Chinese might step in and say, okay, you guys need to stop fighting. This is going to affect our economy horrifically. So yeah, you might see that, but I don't think it's like, you're not going to see Chinese troops or Chinese planes or anything like that. You just might see more international pressure on Israel and the United States. Or oil is already getting up. Yep, people are getting ready. They think it's coming. Scott, the commercials are bumping me off. I don't even know why that is happening. I put in the commercials after. I literally go and auto put them in. So I'm sorry you're getting kicked off. I didn't set that up. My apologies, guys. I'm not trying to get you booted. Is there going to be U.S. airstrikes in Iran? Very possible. That's a very good possibility. If the U.S. decides to step in and they want to force regime change, it is very possible. In that case, I think the Iranian state will probably collapse. I don't think that they can stand up to a U.S. bombing campaign. We're just going to go after all of their economic infrastructure and everything. Loss of Iran is a big loss for Russia militarily and politically. I mean, not really. I mean, it's going to hurt everybody. It's just as much of a loss for Russia as it is for China, as it will end up being for the U.S. and Israel. So it's regime change and the chaos that comes out of it, the black hole that these countries end up becoming, is not worth it at all, ever. What do you think would be the U.S. civilian reaction to war with Iran? Very unpopular, horribly unpopular. But if we're just bombing them and it's not U.S. servicemen getting killed, then it's not as big of a deal. People just forget about it. Plus, we fucking love Israel over here for some reason. We love Israel for no reason, literally no good reason. There's no good reason. Even the evangelical reason is not really very good. I don't know why we're obsessed with them, and we've been propagandized so hard to just adore Israel. Question: all of the killings by Israel and U.S. and Russia is the bad guy. Why is that? Propaganda. If you're an English speaker, if you live in the West, you only see the propaganda that they want you to see for the most part, unless you're on here watching independent reporters like myself or anybody else, right? You're getting the narrative. Russia's evil, except they've killed far, far, far less civilians than Israel has in a much shorter period of time, in a much less intense combat, in a much smaller area. I mean, Russia's in a much bigger area with a much more intense combat situation, and they are killing far less civilians than Israel is. Israel is just bombing and leveling a whole city, like house by house, brick by brick, bulldozers moving in and bulldozing everything. People are being moved to refugee camps. The refugee camps are then bombed. Israel controls all of the food in and out, all of the water, all of the power. It is an ethnic cleansing and a genocide. There's by definition, that's exactly what it is. So yeah, no, I don't get this. Iran struck Tel Aviv 10 times with ballistic missiles, and one person died. Yes, people were in shelters and safe, but there were still people on roofs filming, in their homes filming. Again, very, very limited civilian casualties for huge weapons coming down in populated areas. Really shows you how much the Israelis care about the people that they're killing. Let's see. Elon saw that based Trump turned on him, broke all promises, joined Gay Graham, Gay Thiel, Thiel, and Gay Altman. Yeah. Yep. This is what I said from the beginning. Presidents don't change anything. They are just the face, the pawn that all of the hate and anger is directed at. They are used to divide the nation, and they are the figurehead, right? But they don't make the decisions. The U.S. is on a train on a train track, right? They're on a railroad. They can't go left or right. There's just one path forward. If they go left or right, they're going all the way back to the station, right? They're restarting. It's going to do horrible damage to themselves. And yeah, it might save them in the long run, but they're not thinking about the long run. They're thinking about what can we do right now to stay on top? How can we stay on top? What do we need to do? We need to take out Iran's nuclear facilities. That's the thinking. It's not long term. If it was, we wouldn't have invaded Iraq. We wouldn't have overthrown Syria. We wouldn't have done all the things that we do. We can fund wars across the world while their southern border is completely infiltrated. It's kind of absurd when you consider the ramifications. Yeah, and it's intentional. Cheap labor, a massive voting population that if they become citizens, they get the right to vote. California doesn't even have voter ID, so obviously that's what they're doing. It's like the only reason that you wouldn't have voter ID is because you want illegal people voting, people that are not allowed to voting. So yeah, no, I mean, there's a method to the madness. It's not chaos. They're doing it intentionally. All right, guys. That's where I'm going to wrap it up today. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been episode 157. Holy God, of Calibrated with Scott. I am your host, Scott, of course. If you guys wouldn't mind leaving that like, comment, and if you have not already subscribed, please subscribe. I believe tonight, if it continues the way it's been planned, I will be doing a second live stream later on tonight around 9 p.m., 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so very late. And that will be with Brian Berletic. We're going to gloat. So if you want to see two bald guys talk about how right they were, then that's what's going to happen tonight. One more question here. Never ascribe to malice that which can adequately be explained by incompetence. I disagree. I think that it's planned. There's planning. You don't let thousands of undocumented people into your country. You want them to pay taxes, right? The government wants those people to pay taxes. The only reason you let them in is if you have a plan for them. That's it. Cheap wages and a massive voting population. So, yep. Be safe, everyone. Take care, and I will see you tonight, most likely, with Brian Berletic. Goodbye.